Sri Sraddhalu Ranade is a scientist, educationist and a scholar. He has been residing in Sri Aurobindo Ashram since childhood and is currently involved in teacher training workshops in integral education and value-based education. He is an author par excellence, a musician, an historian, and above all, a wonderful human being. Let us put a hand together for such a multidimensional personality whose extent of wisdom and knowledge is unfathomable. Without much ado, I now invite Sri Sraddhaluji to address the gathering.
Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. It has been a privilege for me to listen to these exceptional reports of the achievements of Jaipuria school over the last 23 years and especially in the last 1 year. It is a privilege because what Jaipuria school is today implementing is an ongoing process of excellence which will take this movement still higher and thus set an example for all the schools of India and the world. The inspiration for such an ongoing movement of excellence and growth goes back to more than 100 years ago, when India was still in the colonial period, when even the idea of freedom was considered an impossibility. At that time, Sri Aurobindo was the first freedom fighter to set before India the ideal of Purna Swaraj, complete independence. The reason that he gave, he said, was not that we hate the British or they are not good rulers. The reason, he said, was because India has a destiny to fulfill in the world, on which the future of the world depends. And if India is to fulfill her destiny in service to the world, first India must find her soul. And in order to find her soul, she must be free. And therefore, he started the movement for Purna Swaraj. But it was not enough to have political freedom. There had also to be intellectual freedom, cultural freedom, of course economic freedom also, but most of all a spiritual freedom to find her soul, to find her own innate genius. And an important component of that awakening was the need for a revamped approach to education. An education which would be not what the colonial rulers wanted India to be, which was to be a nation of clerks and slaves, but it would be an education which would allow India to discover her soul. And it is with this idea that Sri Aurobindo established the National College and developed a framework of education that later he has named integral education. This is the foundation for Jaipuria school and must eventually become the foundation for the whole of India. Later, when the opportunity came in Pondicherry at the Sri Aurobindo Ashram, this approach was developed and perfected under the guidance of the mother, and the key player in the development of the approach to education, integral education, was Dr. Kirit Joshi, who is also the inspiration and the formator of Anjali ji, Jaipuria ji, and for this school since it was begun. And all of this I place before you as a background to show you how important this movement is. What you have before you is not just performance of awards. There are two kinds of schools which are high performers in awards. There is a school that dedicates itself entirely to training children to win awards and to pass exams. They too will show you high performance in awards. But there is another approach, which is the approach of Jaipuria, that we train children to prepare for life. As a result, when they go for any competition, they perform excellently because that is only one aspect of life. Guess which school survives and develops? Those who aim only at performance of awards, once they reach a certain point, will not grow, will not change. Their children, when they enter life, will find themselves confused, unable to adjust, because life is not about passing exams and getting awards. Life is about fulfilling yourself, and they would be lost. Whereas children who grow up in a framework of integral education, where the whole goal of education is to develop the entirety of your personality, to unfold all the layers of your potential, to develop all the skills, all the faculties of all the parts of your being, and to integrate them around the central person, the child, the soul in evolution. That school, those children, you can put them in the middle of the Sahara desert or the Thar desert, and they will perform brilliantly. Not only survive, they will thrive, lead, innovate, and change the world. Such is the goal that we have set for ourselves. But when the goal is so high, we will always feel that we have fallen short. After all the awards that you may have heard of, we will expect to do better next year. And our measure will not be merely in the number of awards that were won. It will be in the change in every single child, a reflection of which is in those awards. And I want to place before you these two very different paradigms. The paradigm of performance based only on passing exams is the old industrial paradigm. It is largely the framework of education throughout India still, and in large parts of the world. Its origin is in the industrial age in Europe, where the mindset of industry was turned to education. Children had to be prepared to become workers in the industry. Creativity should not be encouraged. They must learn to follow the drill. They must learn to obey. They must work mechanically from morning to evening. They must work in shifts. And they must develop in an assembly line. They must start the day with the school bell, which is the factory bell. They must wear the school uniform, which is the factory uniform, and so on. The result of such an education is mind-numbing, creativity-killing, and dehumanizing. Unfortunately, a large part of India is still under the oppression of such an approach to education. And this is why Sri Aurobindo wanted, more than 100 years ago, to change entirely the system. Into what? The deep vision of the Vedic rishis when they approached education was this: every child is a soul in evolution. When you take birth, You have already come with a sense of purpose. You have already brought with you a certain turn of temperament, a certain line of development which is your fulfillment, which is imprinted in your nature as your swabhava, your temperament, and which forms your swadharma, your line of development, fulfillment. Sri Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita that it is better to fail in following your own swabhava than to succeed in following someone else's. Why? Because even in failing in your own line of development, you have succeeded, because you have fulfilled your line of development. But when you try to imitate somebody else and follow someone else's way, even if you succeed, you have failed, because you have failed yourself, your own innate need for growth. You see how radically different the two approaches are. In the approach of integral education, when we look at a child, we aim to see first at the soul within. Perhaps we do not yet have those eyes to be able to see, but at least we can consider, we can become aware that here is a conscious living soul. And this soul is aspiring. It wants to develop in a certain way. And that is reflected in the child's thinking, in the child's aspirations, in the child's behavior. Our task, therefore, is not to beat the child into shape and force him into some piece of metal as in the industrial system. Our task is to nourish that aspiration. Our task is to assist the child in fulfilling himself, herself. The analogy we may give, if you had a plant in your house and you want to see the plant grow to be healthy, to grow to become a tree that gives fruits, that gives shade, that gives shelter, protection to others. Every day you might go to the plant and say, "Plant, grow up quickly." You pull the leaves, you pull the stem, perhaps you beat it if it's not growing fast enough. What do you think will happen? The plant will wither. It will become stunted, a bonsai, an imitation, unreal, unable to fulfill itself. What we need instead to do, and this is what we have to do with our children, give the plant love. You pour water, you give sunlight, you give fresh air, you speak kind and loving words, you open your heart and pour out love. I will ask you a simple question. In which school in India would you find the vice chairperson asking you to meditate on love in your heart and ask you to give love to all beings? It's not normal. It is exceptional. But one day, this should become the norm for all the schools of the world, because this is the only way that our child will get nourished. But I take the analogy further. What else do you need to do to help the child? Observe the child. And in this approach, we recognize that every child has a unique genius, a unique line of development and unfoldment which no one else can equal. And if you observe the child, you will see in which direction the genius grows and help that genius to unfold. I may give an example. If we judge a fish by its capacity to climb a tree, then the fish will live the rest of its life thinking it is stupid. That's not the fish's innate tendency. And this is the error the conventional industrial education makes when it deals with children. It deals them in uniformity, as if they're all supposed to be exactly a replica, clones of each other. But in the approach of integral education, we look at each child uniquely. And we find ways, and there are many ways, that in a class, even if it is large, we find ways to give that child a unique attention. to give the child the necessary support to develop those facets and aspects. And we see this reflected in the report which was just given of the numerous prizes that the school has won, and it was observed that names were not repeated because each has followed a different line natural to his or her interest. I would like to request all the parents here to participate in our effort, to understand in what way we are approaching your child's education, and to help us to do this. And I would like to point out two important necessities. The first is that in this approach, we observe the natural psychological unfolding of the personality and assist it. We do not twist it out of shape, and therefore certain things must be allowed their natural time. If you observe the child growing as a fetus in the womb, you cannot accelerate that process. There is a timeline, there is a natural sequence of unfolding which continues even after birth. There are faculties of the brain, powers of the mind which unfold in layers, which develop their coordination with other parts of the body. The gross motor skills are followed by the fine motor skills. If you expect the child to develop fine motor skills before the gross motor skills are developed, it will not work. You will only distort the brain. If you expect the child to develop abstract mental skills of mathematics before he has learned to enjoy the world through the senses, before he has learned to play with recognition, similarities and differences, then you will be distorting the brain. Today, all over the world, there is an epidemic of dyslexia. Do you know why? Precisely because we push the children to grow faster than they are capable of. We push the brain to develop in forms and directions before it is ready. And the result is the brain development skips a step. And when it skips a step, you have effectively dyslexia. Dyslexia is nothing but a step skipped in the natural sequence of the brain development. And so, the first thing which I would request is trust Jaipuria school not to push from your side too much. Yes, you are anxious. Yes, you are concerned. But accept that there is a deeper psychology in which things have to unfold. For example, you could ask a child to learn to write complete sentences and try to train the child to do it from the age of 1 or 2. And yes, you would take a few years to develop it, and eventually around the age of 6, the child will be able to write a complete sentence perhaps. You will have made him suffer for 5 years unnecessarily. The fact is, when the brain is not ready, all your efforts are wasted. Instead, if you allowed the child naturally to develop and follow his innate instinct in writing skills, automatically at the age of 6 he will have that capacity anyway. So the attempt to force something prematurely is bound to fail and is entirely unnecessarily, needlessly putting the child through suffering. We don't do it. Instead, we focus on the skills and faculties which are unfolding at that age. So the second thing which I would ask your help for would be, how do you recognize that this child needs this particular help for developing this skill? A very simple test. What is the child most interested in? The instinct that nature has implanted in us automatically reveals what is needed next. The child was interested in something at a certain age, now suddenly his interest changes. And that indicates the mind, the brain, the body, the emotions now need something else. And we follow that line, support that new interest and develop it. It is so simple. In other words, if we follow this natural method, following the need of the mind and the brain and the heart and the body, then at each step, the learning becomes a joy. In fact, I would go so far as to say, till the age of 12, when the mind formally begins to form and develop as an independent power, till the age of 12, all learning should be play. All academics should be indistinguishable from play. And this is where we need your help. If your child comes home happy and tells you how much he enjoyed the fun that they had in the classroom, do not panic. It is a good sign. We expect that good education, good academics means the child should be miserable, should be staring at a book, should be writing away all the time, should be busy doing something. And so if we see the child sitting quietly looking out at the trees and daydreaming, then we say, why are you wasting your time? Pull out your textbook and write and read or do something useful. That's not how it works. The time spent in thinking, in daydreaming, is as valuable as the time spent in reading or writing or doing some activity. In fact, in the whole development of the child, activity should be balanced with stillness and silence. The two go hand in hand. When this other aspect of silence and introspection is not allowed to be developed, you have the distorted bonsai-like, stunted development. And if we follow this truly, at each step, the test that we have been successful is the child will enjoy the activity. The child will come back happy. So if he comes back home happy and tells you how much fun he had, it's a good sign. If he comes back unhappy and he says it was boring, then please complain to the teacher. But from our side, we ensure that he will never come back unhappy. Yes, there are occasional incidents, but they are not the norm. There is another side to the whole approach to integral education, and that is the support that you can provide from the home. Because for us, our teachers are as much parents, and parents are as much teachers. At least till the age of 12, before certain formal intellectual academics begin, we cannot separate these two spaces. In fact, in many ways we can say children spend more time with us in school than they spend time in interaction with you. We are much more their parents, isn't it? And we have a great responsibility equally. What you saw in the report of the school awards was a brief glimpse into the commitment that the teachers have to looking after your children, because they are equally our children. And if we love them as much as you do, you can trust that we will give our best also, as you would in our place. But we need your help in something. The time they spend at home should be in some way in continuity, in cohesion with the objectives and the efforts that we make in the school in our approach of integral education. And we would want that at home also they are given certain kinds of support. I will suggest certain things here, but perhaps you can develop variations or discuss with your teachers and develop other possibilities also. But one thing which we find makes a huge difference to the child's power of attention, concentration, is the habit of reading, much more than the habit of watching videos, games, or television. When you watch TV, yes, you may hear or see a story narrated. The content of the story is yours. but your mind is in a state of passivity. The story is narrated to you and shown to you, and the sounds and the drama is all created for you. Your mind has no opportunity to be creative. On the other hand, when a story is read out, when a story is narrated, when a story is read by the child directly, the child's mind has to visualize the characters, create the background, create the scenery, create the emotional mood, and immerse himself into the story. And all the faculties and senses are fully engaged and are being developed. So we would request that rather than allowing the children to sit and watch TV, if they are old enough to read, give them any interesting book to read. Does not matter, it's a story book. This power of visualization, which is so critical to creativity in the future, will develop. And the ability to empathize with the heart will develop. And if you can, and you will enjoy this, if you can make the time, read out a story to the child, or narrate the story to the child and make it up as you go along, does not matter. And if you can tell them stories from the Mahabharata or the Ramayana, it would be so wonderful. We would ask your participation in this, and especially as a side effect, to reduce the time spent on television. Television has a very powerful effect of weakening concentration. Because when you are watching TV, the flickering screen creates a hypnotic effect. You watch someone watching TV, you will see they don't blink, their pupils are dilated, and these are clinical symptoms of mild hypnosis. You are in a state of mild hypnosis when you watch TV. And that's the reason why you will find you suck all the swear words, all the bad words, and repeat automatically, because it has got into you subconsciously. It's the reason why if you're sitting down and eating food and the TV is on the corner, you have no conversation on the table. Everybody turns to look at the TV, even if it's the same junk images repeated 20 times. You can't help it. The flickering screen pulls your eyes with a hypnotic effect. So I would request you at home, if you have to watch TV, set a separate time, watch something interesting, useful, educationally valuable, and then switch off TV, sit down and chat, read out a story. If you're eating food, do not leave the TV on while you are eating food. Let there be conversation, and you will find the bonding in the family grow immensely. One of the greatest side effects, negative side effects of the last 15 years of television in the country has been the weakening of the family bond, because we have nothing to say on those few minutes that we are together while eating. Please take advantage of this. And if you can, when the child has to work at home, some homework, some activity, allow the child breaks in the activity. Because it is a fact that the power of concentration grows gradually like the muscles, and it needs rest between activities. So when you have done some exercise, you need to pause, get back your breath, and then only you can do the next round of exercise. So if they are studying, and after a while they stop studying and look away, recognize that this is the point where the mind needs a little bit of rest. Allow them that rest. Do not scold them. And then when they feel fresh, if they want to come and chat with you, that's fine. When they feel fresh, they will go back and study on their own. Recognize the need for these brief pauses and gaps for the brain and mind to assimilate what has been studied. If you force them artificially, in any case, it will not help. And finally, when you interact with your children, we will request you, as we do ourselves with our teachers, never scold the child. Never punish the child. Especially, never scold a child for telling the truth. When you scold a child for speaking something true, he will learn to lie. Something which his body does not want to do, which his heart does not want to do, which his mind does not want to do. Do you know how they build lie detectors? They wire up the body. When you speak a lie, your body revolts. Your heartbeat goes up, your perspiration increases, your pupils dilate, your breathing becomes shallow and rapid because your whole being is revolting against falsehood. The innate truth of the child is the soul, a divine truth. And to lie is something shameful even for the child. But we teach him to lie because we punish him when he speaks the truth. And so he must lie to protect himself. Our rule always should be, the child should be allowed to speak to us whatever he chooses freely, and we will never scold him for having spoken the truth. If he has spoken a lie, yes, you can scold him, but only to that extent that he knows that you do not approve of it. But when he speaks the truth, even if he says he has done something really bad, you must help him to face the consequences of what he has done wrong, to set right what has been done wrong, but never to scold. And if in the school and at home we can partner in this way, we can create for our child an environment of love, of trust, of truth, of beauty, and of the sacred. These words which I have used just now are what are the nourishment for the soul. After all, every child is a soul in evolution as you and I are. Just because our body has been longer on earth and is a little more aged does not make us in any way superior or inferior. When we look at the child as a soul in evolution, we treat him or her as an equal, with the same respect we would have them give to us. When we treat them with respect, they will treat us back with respect. When we talk down to them, then they rebel and talk down to us. So it's a relationship that we have to change and make it a partnership. But these words which I spoke, and I will repeat them, they are the very nourishment of the soul. The soul is in essence a part of the divine, which already carries within it all the knowledge it needs for fulfilling its life. And if we trust that, if we allow that space of trust, it will guide the development of the child and lead him and her to his destiny completely. But for that, we have to create this space of trust first, and then love. Love is the nourishment for the soul. Love is the most powerful force in the universe which brings the whole universe together. It is the power that the divine pours out to draw everything back into himself, back to his heart. Because the divine pours love into us, we love others. We feel love for others, which is really a reflected love of the divine for us. This is the soul's nourishment first and foremost. And then in the form of life, it takes three different aspects. In the Indian tradition, we have three words for that: Satyam, Shivam, and Sundaram. The truth, the sacred, the beautiful. Create a space in the child's life where truth, sanctity, and beauty are the dominant theme. In your mind, in your thoughts, in your heart, in your feelings, and in your actions, and in the forms of things in the home, as much as in the school and the classroom. And if we can create a space like this, sacred, then that truth, vibrant in the heart of the child, will have the natural unfolding freedom. And together, we will help the soul in evolution to find her way, his way, and fulfill. The awards, the success in exams, the success in life, in whatever way you define it, will be incidental. It will be the fulfillment in life which will be the most important goal that we set for ourselves. These are a few words which I wanted to share with you, a few ideas, and I hope that together at Jaipuria school we will set a new standard that will be for the whole of India and for the whole of the world along the lines that Sri Aurobindo had conceived more than 100 years ago as a means for national education, for the Indian mind and Indian soul to recover its own genius and to fulfill India's destiny in the world. Our children, we hope, will be the exemplars of this, and it is that generation which will fulfill India's mission and India's destiny for the world, and we will have the satisfaction of having helped them to do it. Namaste.
Founders' Day is a special day for any school. This day, we reminisce the memory of those great leaders because of whose vision and intellect we all stand here today as a family. I feel highly honored and privileged to get the opportunity to propose the vote of thanks on this benign occasion. I would like to thank the school founders, without whom the school would not have seen its inception. It was their vision and foresightedness that has made the school seen its inception. St. M.R. Jaipuria School is what it is today because of their dedication and hard work. Providing education and nurturing young minds is the noblest of all professions, and we are indeed proud teachers. I would especially like to thank the Vice Chairperson, Mrs. Anjali Jaipuria, who gave us this entire platform to nurture these young minds and help us to put this whole event together, for being the pillar of strength and continuously supporting the cause of students. It is indeed my pleasure to express my heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed chief guest, Shri Sraddhalu Ranade, a renowned scholar and educationist, for gracing the function with his spiritual presence. His profound knowledge and wisdom has always been very valuable for both the students and teachers. His enlightening vision has always been a guiding light for all of us. I would also like to thank our principal, Mrs. Pramani Chopra, who encouraged us to guide these students, achieve and scale newer heights, work sincerely and make this day memorable. My co-vice principal, academics, Mrs. Asha Chadda, whose forever motivating and supporting spirit always does wonders. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your support. My sincere thanks to the pre-primary headmistress, Mrs. Kanika Chopra, junior school headmistress, Mrs. Anjana Gupta, Nafsajan headmistress, Mrs. Kirti Gaur, the academic coordinators, the class coordinators, and last but not the least, the class teachers and the co-teachers whose untiring and diligent efforts made this event see the light of the day. My special thanks to the entire music department, which has attained considerable heights under the dynamic leadership of the department head, Dr. H.C. Paliwal. My infinite gratitude to the guests and parents for joining us in our celebration. And last but not the least, the administrative staff, our admin officers, Mrs. Alka Arora and Mr. Suren Pandey, along with the support staff who receive much less acknowledgements in comparison to the massive efforts put in by them. Special thanks to our young dynamic counselor, Ms. Anam Zaidi, for her valuable inputs. Thank you so much, ma'am. Parents, we are making our best possible efforts to groom your valuable possessions. Your children, in fact, our children, who you have entrusted to us with confidence. Once again, I thank you all.